Before we get started today, I want to say thank you for every single like, comment, recommendation, and a very special thank you to my listener support group. If you like what we do here at Off the Deep End Podcast, please consider checking out the listener support tab on our channel's anchor link. Without you, we would not be able to continue the great work we're doing with these conversations, breaking down boundaries and helping heal each other by sharing our stories, our trials, our tribulations, and how we process them. Let's jump straight into this episode.
Are you thinking about making a podcast? Spotify has a platform that lets you make one, and if I can figure it out, you definitely can too. You can create your own content all in one place for free with zero hangups and even earn money as soon as you get started. Spotify lets you record and edit episodes from your phone or computer so you can go mobile, just like I enjoy to do. My favorite thing about it is that you can create video episodes if you wish and upload them to wherever podcasts are heard. You can even set up subscriptions or, if you're like me, listener support options for listeners to help you grow. I 10 out of 10 recommend the Spotify for Podcasters app. Or, why don't you just step over to www.spotify.com/podcasters to get started on your own podcast. Yeah, I really do admire everybody at Kindred. There's so many great competitors. I was just going through their Instagram today, just looking at all the great human beings that go there, and I was like, damn, I'm surrounded by some incredible individuals. We already brought up Jeff. He's awesome.
Yeah, Jeff's a great guy.
Russ and Kyle. I met Kyle at the Sheepdog Response pistol course up here in Seattle.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and he's super awesome. I look at him and I'm like, holy shit, this is like a monster of a human being. And all this built up powerful aggression, he controls it in such a way. It's almost, once he gets a hold of one of your wrists, you're in trouble. So
what's funny is the longer you go into jiu-jitsu, so Kyle does stuff to me when we're rolling, and then I'm like, oh man, I can't believe I keep getting caught in that over and over and over again. But my students, I find that I can't do the stuff that Kyle does to me back to Kyle, but then I wind up doing it to all my students. So wrist locks, if you ask any of my students, I just wrist lock them all constantly. But I look at Kyle wrist locks me constantly, so it's like trickling downhill,
Oh yes, yeah. I almost lost the wrist lock game just the other day. I really had to tap when I was supposed to tap, but I didn't realize I was getting put in that. I thought they were going for a Kimura, and then next thing I know, I felt a pop in my wrist, and I'm like, oh, tap. Yeah. So I tap my hand, my feet, and I say tap at the same time. Yes. when I'm really fucked up. So
they got me good quite a bit. There's a small group of us that train together, and one of my training partners, Sean, he was in here yesterday morning and we were rolling, and it was a good match, and it was in front of everybody. Like, all my students wound up stopping and watching us when we were there, and everybody else at the gym. I don't like, my students sounds weird. Everybody that I train with at the gym was all there watching, and Sean, he's 6'7", I'm 6'6", so he's one of the few people that's actually taller than I am. But he got me in a really tough position. He wrist locked me, and it just came out super. I go, tap. It was like 2 seconds left on the clock. Everyone goes, what was that? I'm like, oh, he wrist locked me. He caught me. What can I do? It happens.
Oh my goodness. Yes, it definitely does. I think that the more simple moves can be just as effective as the more complex ones. Yeah. I had no idea when I started this journey that there was going to be so many different avenues as far as what not to get caught in. I knew that it was going to be almost a sheer slope uphill battle for me, because I've never done any martial arts before. And so my approach to it was, all right, your cup's empty. Be humble, be patient, try not to be that the flailing white belt as what I look out for. I don't flail, take your time, be patient. Don't attack things you don't know how to hold on to. And I don't know a lot of submissions or anything. I think I've had 3 submissions yesterday that and 2 of them, 2 chokes and one sub. And the sub was a Kimura, and I didn't know what any of that was even 2 weeks ago. So
that's awesome.
This is my 3rd consistent week of going, because I had to stop because I had a horrible work incident where I got poked with a dirty needle, and I had to make sure my blood work was clean.
Yes.
Before I came back.
It is.
Yeah, and thank goodness it is, because I was going to be messed up if I didn't get to continue this journey. I'm surrounded by amazing human beings every single day, fierce competitors. Yep. And it's overwhelming to be around like a 5'3" individual has a mountainous shadow that they've put years and years into this jiu-jitsu journey. Well, I'm super excited to have you on, man. If you know what, this kind of unconventional, and I like unconventional things. So everybody listening in, this is another episode of Off the Even Podcast. Thanks for tapping it in. I'm joined today by Bobby Martinez. He is a black belt, I believe, but excuse me, brown belt. Brown belt. Okay, I got to tone it back a little bit. I thought you were a black belt for sure.
No,
you know
brown belt.
All right, well, I know it's not far away at this point. Jesus Christ, because we were just talking. You remember some of my brown belt buddies' first classes. So, oh yeah. So you're old school. How long have you been rolling for?
So it's kind of strange. So like if you count like my first jiu-jitsu class ever, it was 21 years ago. So that was my first jiu-jitsu class ever. But I moved all around the country, and it was one of those things where I trained for 6 months, not train for a year, not train for 3 months, not train. So I would say like consistently started doing jiu-jitsu probably getting close to 11 years ago now. 10 years ago maybe is when I consistently started doing jiu-jitsu. It's when you get older, time all blends together, but I think I was 30, so about 10 years ago, maybe 11.
Awesome.
So that's when I consistently started going at Gracie Baja Edmonds, which is now Seattle.
Yes. Wow. Well, I know a couple guys who enjoy.
Yeah. Don't quote me on that. If anyone's out there listening and taking notes and correcting, give or take a couple of years. It's hard to remember.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, I definitely didn't take my alpha brain today, if you can't tell. So
yeah, me neither. Rough night last night too. So
Oh yeah. I was up late. I was up about midnight is when I got done recording my last episode. So
oh wow.
And I was up at 3 a.m. with insomnia, so it's tons of fun.
I have the same thing happen. I have trouble sleeping at night.
Yeah, I was like, well, you know what? We're gonna go for this. I was trying to schedule another one at 6 a.m. because I was already up for 3 hours, just tapping my foot waiting for this. So I'm definitely super excited. One thing that I wanted to start this off with, just kind of understanding is your foundation. You know, the foundation of who you are as an individual is usually built at the childhood level and altered as you grow. So what was it like for you growing up?
I mean, pretty normal. It was normal to the extent that I was, I guess middle class America. Grew up in Auburn, Washington, moved to Enumclaw, Washington. So kind of small towns. My very young parents, I think my mom was 18 or 19 when I was born. My dad was 20 or 21. So pretty typical. I got in trouble a lot as a kid. I got in a lot of fights. I was a high school dropout. I actually moved away from my parents one time because I was getting in so much trouble and fighting with them so much. I moved in with my grandparents for about a year, realized that, oh my gosh, I had it great at home, moved back after that, and started working at 16 and kind of never looked back. The biggest thing about my childhood that I realized is I had a ton of trouble and anxiety relating to school. And I know it's not for everybody, but I think leaving school at 15 or 16 when I did was probably the best thing I ever did. I left school, started working, and took my education upon myself and started reading a lot, listening to a lot of people. And that probably served me better than anything I did in my entire childhood.
Wow. Well, that's absolutely phenomenal to hear. I have a lot of friends who just didn't vibe with school either. And I always tell them, hey, if you don't if college is not working out for you and you feel like your heart's bringing you to somewhere else, go. Don't wait. You deserve your own version of happiness. And I often say this to my friends so much. I feel like a broken record saying it. You deserve happiness. We often don't understand what happiness is until it's way too late. Yeah. And I wish everybody was able to make a critical decision like that. Like, oh, I'm just going to leave school because it's not good for me right now. And it's okay.
I think there's for me, it was, I've suffered with anxiety. I've gotten over it in my adult life, but into my mid 20s, I suffered a lot. I was diagnosed with panic disorder and I had panic attacks. And a lot of that was around feeling like I wasn't able to do what is traditionally expected of people my age. Like, oh, you're supposed to graduate high school, go to college. You're just this path that's laid out for you, which I was never good at and I didn't like, and feeling like I was doing something wrong because I wasn't able to follow that path was huge. So when I finally had the realization, like it took steps, 16, I left school. That was a huge relief, but I still had anxiety surrounding work at that point. Like, what am I going to do with my life? Where am I going to go? This is what's expected of people. You get a job, you move up the ladder. finding that I wasn't fitting into that between the ages of 16 and 24, 25 was huge. And then it's, anxious all the time. And why am I not excelling as quickly as I want to? How am I ever going to make enough money to live and get by? And finally letting go of all of that in my mid 20s was a huge, like, whew, everything just fell into place at that point when I quit worrying about that and started doing what I wanted to do and following the paths that I was passionate about in life. That's what opened everything up for me. Like, why am I doing what other people want me to do when I have these things that I'm gravitating towards that I actually enjoy and I'm passionate about? Can I find a way to make a living doing this stuff? And that was what really opened the doors for me.
Excellent. I love that. I think that it's overwhelmingly important for us as individuals to remain individuals.
Yes.
Society tells us you need to be in this box. You need to be black, white, bi, trans. You need to be whatever. There's so many boxes that life tries to usher us into, and it really removes our individuality. I think that there is nothing more beautiful than knowing who you are and loving yourself. Is not done enough. Self-discipline in my life is self-love. That's something that I've learned, so that when I could take the path of the this is going to be kind of vulgar for those listening. So if you got children with you, listener discretion is advised. All right, you can take the path of the fit fuck or the path of the fat fuck. That's what I was told by somebody, but that's just an extreme version of it.
Absolutely.
That's when it like appealed to the bodybuilding industry. Now that I've torn my shoulder and I can't do bodybuilding anymore, and I can lift like 10 pounds in a couple of directions with my left arm, I know that path is done for me, so I don't need to take either of those paths. Those paths are just boxes. They're just boxes, nothing more, nothing less. You don't have to look this way or be that way. All you have to do is find out what your own version of happiness is.
Well, there's some scary leaps that happen along that path as well. So the leap from, I was always good at sales, and there's a benefit to that. The benefit is that there's salesmen needed just about everywhere. So once I realized that I was good at that, I stayed with one job for 12 years where I was running gyms, actually, talking about the fitness industry. I ran gyms for a company for about 12 years. And it was eye-opening for me, because as long as the gyms were making money, my bosses pretty much left me alone. So I was essentially my own boss. I set my own schedule, managed my own crews at the gym, managed my own teams. There was still some stress in there. I still had a higher level of anxiety than I had now, but it was significantly better than when I was trying to fit into like the corporate life and trying to do that path. But finally taking the leap from working for other people to working for myself, because it's scary, because if you fail, there's virtually no safety net there. It's like, if you fail, you're hitting the ground, and then you have to start back over and build back up. So the choice comes about. It's, do I want to try to do this and live life on my terms, or do I want to avoid doing this and deal with, for me, all the byproducts that come with working for other people, the anxiety, the stress, the sleepless nights, the trying to fit other people's expectations. Do I want to take this leap and succeed, or try to succeed and potentially fail? Or do I want to be 60 years old, living these past 40 years working for someone else, wishing I had taken that leap when I was 25?
Hell yeah. And that's something I try to tell any youth that I run into, because there's something they're usually taught as a young child, right? You can do anything you want. You can be whatever you want when you grow up. And then society says, no, well, hold on. First, you got to graduate high school. Okay. Then you got to go and make sure is your senior project done. Now, okay. Now what college are you going to? Oh, you didn't get a scholarship? Well, make sure to apply for a bunch of grants. Make sure to apply for a bunch of loans, student loans. And they kind of walk you into this path. I think that going off that very, very, walked on road, and finding your own path is essential. Not just to individuality, but also to keep that childhood vision alive of you can do anything.
There are people that path works for. Like, so my brother is very successful at that path. He high school, college, and he makes a great living and does really well for himself following that traditional path. But I would certainly say it's not for everybody. And I think it's at least worth exploring what your passions are and whether or not you can make it work pursuing those as opposed to pursuing that traditional path. I think it's vital that everyone at least pursue your passions to an extent. Whatever extent fits in your life, you should pursue a passion to that point.
And I totally agree, my brother. I definitely agree. I think there's so much that we can gain from experiencing loss. Loss is huge. Failure is not final, but it is for you.
Well, for me, it was that choice of, do I want to try to make this road and this path for myself and potentially fail? Or that question I just said, do I want to be at retirement age, having worked this entire life that I'm not passionate about up to that point, wishing I had tried when I was in my early 20s. And that the regret of not having tried was greater for me than the possibility of failure.
Wow. You know, I'm really glad you brought that up, because that's what I was going to kind of walk into next. For a lot of different situations, especially I'm going to say a word I don't agree with. It's typical in untypical situations, as far as a bad work, a bad school life, a bad experience in the military, bad relationships, bad domestic violence situations. They all have something in common. If the situation is worse than the amount of labor it's going to take to get out of, usually they'll leave. Yeah. But you know, it's kind of that yin and yang. Is this uphill battle really going to be worth it? And I think that's something that I get answered every single day where I roll. It is worth it. It is worth it to go and get kneed in the face for the 100th time by accident. And it is worth it to have my jaw pop and it hurts all week. It is worth it to show up to my job covered in bruises, and they're like, what the hell happened? Are you safe at home? Is your wife and you doing all right? Like, it's just jiu-jitsu. It's the journey. It's an uphill battle.
The further along you get to, like, the less that stuff happens. So like my main rolling partners that I train with, like, we're all in our 40s, or some of us are even getting up pushing 50, and we're all pretty chill when we roll at this point. And when you achieve a certain level of proficiency and you have a certain core group of people, you know, like, all right, we're just going to kind of flow through this, and you set the pace and I'll follow it. And me being a big guy, I'm 6'6", 275. I still have a tendency to push the pace too far sometimes, because I'll just like, I'm not going to be stuck here anymore, and just, you know, muscle out of it. And then, you know, people like Kyle make me pay for that. At that point, he's like, oh, we're doing this now. Okay.
Oh my goodness. And I think that it's very interesting how that works, because the smallest people I've ever rolled with are usually the most, one, agile, two, and powerful, overwhelmingly powerful. I never expected to be slammed, tossed, choked. I had one guy get behind me, take the back take. I would not let him get in for any type of choke or on my neck. So he just Indian burned my wrist. And then he covered my mouth and my nose. And then he covered my mouth and my nose, the gas mask. And then I
know who you're talking about.
God, it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous.
It's crazy what leverage can do, right? So like 150-pound person using a appropriate technique and leverage can feel much stronger and much heavier than they actually are.
Yeah, I felt that. I felt that for sure.
Absolutely. No, the Kindred's a great environment up there. And what's funny is, not taking anything away from other folks, but I remember when Kindred started. I remember all of us getting together and like, okay, cool, this is going to be an awesome thing up here. And we had a specific environment we wanted to create when Kindred came about. And moving out here to Enumclaw, I just wanted to recreate that out here when I opened my gym. I'm like, okay, cool. I love what they had up there. And it was hard for me to leave that, but moving out here at the time was just the right move for my family. So I'm like, okay, like I've got to do everything within my power to recreate that out here in Enumclaw. And that's what I've been working on for the past year and a half, 2 years now out here.
Awesome. Well, I'm definitely going to have to come and check you out over there.
Yeah, Russ has come out a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. Russ comes out. Kyle's put on a couple seminars out here. Aislinn put on a seminar out here. So yeah, we have a fair amount across. And have you met Austin up there? I shouldn't. He's one of my. I promoted him to blue belt. They call him Stretchy Boy.
I'm pretty sure I have.
Yeah,
I'm really bad with names. I've had quite a few TBIs in my life, and then concussion after concussion. And then also, I had dyslexia. It's really difficult to nail in the names. But I'm about 98% sure I've been either choked out, I've had my face rubbed across the mat and scraped off, or I've had sweat dripped onto me because I couldn't get out from under them. Yes.
Well, yeah, Austin, he's a good guy. He just moved up to Edmonds from Kent, but when he was living in Kent, he was training out here with me, and he's a really, really good guy, and he's fitting in pretty well up there from what I understand. He would go up there and train every now and then. He'd go up to open mats. He'd attend seminars. Were you at the Gi, No Gi, and Whiskey event?
I wasn't able to make it. I got called into work, sadly.
I got you. But yeah, he's one of my good friends who lives up there now. He lives in the apartments right next to Kindred, actually. So yeah. So he gets to walk over there and train whenever he wants to.
Well, I'm not jealous at all.
Yeah.
I've got quite a few friends that live right in those apartments right there. So you know,
absolutely. There's a few people up there that live right next to it. So I used to live in Edmonds, like 5 corners across from Cafe Ladro when I was living up there, and that's just quick, easy commute right over to Kindred.
Absolutely. I love it. I love the fact that you're trying to recreate that family, because you know, being surrounded by great human beings who are working on themselves every day and growing all together, it's kind of hard to walk away from that. And to try to recreate it, it takes time.
Absolutely.
But when you have the right environment, the right energy, you're putting out the right type of advertisement, like, hey, this is what we like to do here. If you want to be a part of this, be a part of it. Come on down. There's nothing wrong with it. And that is a great way to attract great people, because greatness, you know, other people can recognize that and gravitate towards it. It's a natural thing. I was at an Ignite gala just last week. So I think I pronounced it right. Gala. They called it a gala. I call it the gala because I think it sounds gala. I don't know which one, but I went to it, and it was a huge fundraiser where we help elevate young ladies in the STEM industry. So working in technology. So Microsoft was there. A bunch of different tech companies, AI companies were there, and it was a huge fundraiser to uplift others. And one of my main takeaways was, wow, this is the same feeling I get when I'm surrounded by people like Kindred. It's hard to recreate that feeling, the feeling of having a place where you're able to have horrible failures every single day, and you're going to pay for them. But it's going to be worth every penny.
Yeah. Is it, for me, the thing with jiu-jitsu, is that it's for me anyway, it was impossible to spend that much, to have that experience around people and not become connected on a deeper level than just your day-to-day interactions with individuals. So, you know, going in there and knowing you're going to be tapping out to people and knowing that you're going to tap people out, and there's a level of maybe vulnerability, I don't know if that's the right word, that comes with that and ego crushing, that I think the ego crushing might cause the vulnerability in a lot of people that jiu-jitsu gives, that you have to be comfortable in the environment that you're in order to accept that as a person.
Dude, I am just thinking about the same thing that you just put out there, because I've had a real life experience with that. So I wouldn't say fun fact. It was absolutely very, very challenging. I thought that the beginner takedown class was at Tuesday at like, I think I showed up at the right time. I just read the instructions. I got dyslexia, right? So this is one of those dyslexia mistakes. I showed up to the advanced class, I guess, because there was nothing in there but brown and black belts. And I ended up, Ashlyn, Coach Alfie was there, and Coach Daffron were there as well. And so I was very, very, I was surrounded by, you know, the elite people who train there, who are competing at real high levels. And, you know, people who I follow I look up to these individuals quite a bit, not just because they're phenomenal human beings, but they're pretty much professional athletes at that point. It was hard for me to stomach walking into the wrong class, and then they're like, well, you're here now, come on. And I'm like, I can sit this one out. It's all good. You know, I showed up at the wrong time. This is on me. But they said, no, you have to stay. You're here now, so come and learn. And I definitely got worked. I walked in to Kindred every single time. I remind myself, my cup is empty. There's no ego here. Let's be appreciative of the role. Let's make sure we're not flailing. And number one, tap when you need to tap. Yes. And I tapped and I tapped and I tapped and I tapped. And it really kind of engraved that vulnerability feeling I was getting, because people would be choking me, telling me how to not get choked at the same time. And for that to happen, you have to accept it. You have to, this is my situation. I think jiu-jitsu and the people that surround the community of jiu-jitsu, for my short experience so far, have been just amazing. It's absolutely amazing to be vulnerable around somebody as they're helping you grow on your journey and teaching you new things. I did Taekwondo, and Taekwondo definitely wasn't it for me. I got in trouble for sparring with
Oh, really?
4 belts higher than me, and the coach's our instructor's daughter was sparring. She was a black belt in Taekwondo, and she was sparring with me, and I knocked her out by accident, and I got in big trouble. But here you don't have to worry about that. If I go to sleep, I go to sleep. You know what I'm saying?
Well, the thing about it is, with all my training partners, people I train with regularly, people might not agree with me, but kind of my personal philosophy is, if I'm not tapping out even to lower belts, then I'm probably not growing the way I should, because I'm only playing my A game and I'm not working on the areas that I'm weak at, right? So say I have a blue belt who is a very strong wrestler with a good side control. So what am I going to benefit from going in there, making sure they get on their back, getting inside control, and just ripping Keelocks and Kimuras all day? I know that that's something that I'm capable of already at this point. So why don't I put myself in a bad spot, maybe start in half guard, see if I can hold them there. If they get past, cool, now I'm in bottom side control. That guy who's been wrestling his whole life is going to be very, very hard to get off me at that point. I'll grow a lot more by being down there in bottom side control, trying to escape and risking getting tapped out because I'm not in one of my better spots, than I will by playing my A game every single time. And you're going to get tapped out. You're going to get caught and stuff. So even as a brown belt, you get caught by white belts and blue belts if you let them play their strongest game and you play your worst game. But that's how you grow. That's how you get better at escaping side control. That's how you get better at your defense and avoiding submissions. So my personal philosophy is, if I'm not in there with my training partners every single day and tapping out relatively often, then I'm probably not growing at that point.
I definitely relate to that. You know, I've had different obstacles in life that I came across. Being in the military, leaving the military transition, trying to find my place, my purpose afterwards. You know, often we as veterans, we run into a lot of issues with who we are. We don't know who we are anymore. We lost our identity with leaving that uniform behind. And I think that this is something that we can all relate to when we leave somewhere we're comfortable with, somewhere we've created a family at, and we walk away from it. You know, do you think there's a way to create new bonds with complete strangers when you fill up a room with people who are sweaty and rolling on the ground to choke each other out?
Absolutely. That's how you do it. I mean, I can't think of a better way to do it. I can put it that way. I mean, there probably is, right? Like military, I imagine if people were coming together for working towards a collective goal, then I could see how that could create a bond, especially if there's combat involved with real consequences, injury, life and death, things like that. Like, you almost have no choice but to be bonded and collectively work together towards your goal at that point. So you're probably going to leave that with a sense of brotherhood that's not found in other places, right?
100%.
But outside of that, like I think of, combat sports, jiu-jitsu, wrestling, stuff like that is being a very, very good avenue for creating bonds and brotherhood and I don't know what else you call it, but yeah, like a family, like what we've been talking about.
100%. So why don't you tell me about some of the lessons that you learned over your years rolling?
We've gone over quite a few of them. I would say that if we're speaking strictly about jiu-jitsu lessons, as opposed to like jiu-jitsu lessons lend themselves, in my opinion, to life lessons, because who's that? Miyamoto Musashi. He had that saying that once you achieve greatness in one thing, you see it in all things. So essentially, like, once you reach a certain level of proficiency in whatever it is, be it jujitsu or karate or MMA, or you pick your discipline, then you start finding ways where you see that thing in everything else that you do, right? So if you go roll really, really hard rounds in the morning, you get beat up, you win some, you lose some, you have a great time with your training partners, then the rest of the day, that's going to have an effect on you. It could be lowering your level of stress. It could be like, oh, this is easy. I just rolled with monsters all morning. Whatever challenge I'm tackling now is nothing compared to that, right? It could be, the actual physical effect that it has on your body as far as stress relief, hormone regulation, just being in shape because you've been doing it a long time. The biggest lesson I've learned is just keep showing up and keep doing it, and it's going to affect every part of your life.
I love that. I absolutely love that. I think that it's so important to find things like that affect everything else. Something that's
bodybuilding and weightlifting, you mentioned that before, that has a very similar effect in my opinion, just because of the hormone regulation, the stress relief, the overall healthy effect it has on your lifestyle rubs off on every aspect of it.
100%, brother. When you kick the day's ass, it's really hard for it to kick yours.
Yeah, and some people do that with running, some people do that with jiu-jitsu. For me, it's hard to replace physical exertion, but I've been an artist in one form or another for most of my life. So I've also found that hitting that flow state in art often has a very, very good positive effect on my life as well. So just kind of, zoning out into, it could be drawing with my tablet here in Photoshop, or it could be doing photography, or it could even be just being out, sitting out the pen and paper and drawing. When I hit that kind of flow state with those things, it has a net positive effect on my life that's tangible.
100%. And creating YouTube videos is a great way to do that. So why don't you tell me about your businesses and your YouTube channel that you got?
So my wife and I had a podcast called Take Back Your Life a while ago, and it was rough. I was new at it. I just knew that I like talking to people, like kind of like this, having interesting conversations. So I was like, oh, why don't I start recording these? And I had lots of guests and stuff, and it was fun. But I mean, it consisted of sitting in my living room with a microphone in the middle of the room and trying to pick up all the audio from everybody and editing that into something cohesive and putting it out. That turned into wanting to do that as a YouTube channel. So I'm like, oh, why don't we have a video part of this? So then I got an inexpensive thing as a Canon EOS M50, which is like a $600 camera, right? So I got this Canon camera and started recording our podcast, like became a video podcast at that point. So I had this camera and I would go on hikes and stuff and I'd take it with me. And I'd start taking photos. Slowly but surely over years, that turned into me like loving photography and wanting to learn everything I could about photography. Because when I'm interested in something, I go big with it, like right away. I give it everything I got, and I want to learn everything about it and become as proficient as I can at it. So then I started learning how to do like studio photography, and the combination of podcasts not quite getting the response that I wanted, and realizing that I could scratch that itch with photography and putting out videos on photography and just documenting my process of learning how to become a photographer. That's what the YouTube channel became. It became, hey, I'm going to learn how to become a photographer. I'm going to put on video the lessons that I learn along the way. You guys can follow along. And now it's just kind of become what it is. And I don't get huge. Some videos I get a few thousand views. Some videos I get like 35 still. So it's just kind of like a thing that I do. I'm trying to stay consistent at. And if it gets a following, gets a following. But it definitely scratches that creative itch. Editing videos is probably one of my favorite things to possibly do. Using Premiere Pro, getting video, uploading just raw footage, sifting through it and making something cool to watch is one of my favorite things in the world.
I love the creativity, my brother. Art is something, and artistic expression in general is something that I'm huge about as well. I don't have a lot of art forms. One of my art forms is shooting. I love going out and I wouldn't say just the bullet hitting something and going bing. It's not necessarily that. It's going out in nature and just being away. Escapism is something that we often seek as human beings because we spend so much time wrapped up in our phones, our lives, the negatives, and it can get really overwhelming. So I love escapism, and art is one of the best forms of it. So creating art is what I love to do. I love sharing other stories. I hate sharing my story, but I have to every now and then. Mostly it's other stories. And I really do admire the fact that you wanted to come on, because I love different people's energies. You have a very bright personality, and a lot of people don't. A lot of people have shell off, kind of closed off personalities. They don't want to to share their deepest, darkest parts, or the most positive, or even sometimes horrible experiences with the world. And I love that you wanted to, man.
Well,
What's like?
I remember trying to get podcast guests, and I remember, and you seem to be good at it, but for me, it was always a struggle trying to find people to talk to, especially people that have, like you said, an outgoing personality. And the podcasts of people that don't have that are definitely, there's value to that. So I'm not trying to say that you only need to find people with outgoing personalities, but every now and then it's fun to get two people who like talking and have these, like you said, bright personalities. You know, it's a good listen. So like when I saw you looking for guests, I'm like, man, I remember doing that. I'm like, we have some mutual friends. Let me go ahead and reach out. And if I can hop on here, why not? It'll be a good conversation, you know?
Yeah, and I'd love to do it. I'd love to do it again in the future as well. On more than just today, 100%, because you got great energy.
Circling back to the escapism. So that really touched something with me. So I loved Edmonds, and I loved. I ran a gym in Mount Lake Terrace. I love that whole area up there. The thing, and it's personal to me, I remember walking back on my back patio in Edmonds, but they're by Five Corners, and there was never a moment of silence. I would always hear cars, I'd hear sirens, I'd hear people talking, and then my daughter had just been born. And then I remember growing up in Enumclaw and being out here and being able to walk on my porch at night and not hear anything. And I was like, I've got to raise her out in Enumclaw, because for me, that had value, and I wanted to share that value with my family. And my wife is kind of different. She loved the vibe of Seattle, the vibe of Edmonds, and she liked being up there. She liked the people, she liked the energy, she liked the pace. And we were kind of opposites in that. So I wanted to move, like I was thinking like northern Idaho, Montana, Greenwater. Like Greenwater is a small town up by Crystal Mountain up here. I think there's probably 50 people in the whole town.
Oh yeah.
But Enumclaw wound up actually being the compromise. She's like, okay, we're not going to any of those places, but how about Enumclaw, where you're from? I'm like, okay, cool. We'll move back to Enumclaw. But I crave that. I mean, I can drive in under an hour. I can be up at sunrise up at Mount Rainier. So, and there's something, I go up there often. That's something about that I craved and I needed to get back to.
I'm gonna have to go with you one of these days, because I saw your YouTube video about it, and I was like, "Oh my goodness, how beautiful!"
Isn't it kind of surreal looking up there? Just like quiet. Unreal. Yeah. It's great. It's great.
I love nature. Escapism is huge. We all see different forms.
Yes.
Some people want to keep up with the Kardashians. I don't want to keep up with shit.
The flow state gives you that escapism. So the flow state, when you're doing things, is a form of escapism. You're not thinking about anything else other than the task at hand. So you're escaping your stresses. You're escaping your every other thought other than the reaction your body is doing at that moment. So I think that's why a lot of things like jiu-jitsu have taken off in recent years, because I think more and more people in our fast-paced society are craving some sort of escapism. So you can get that through shooting, you can get that through exercise, through running, through jiu-jitsu. For me, I want it all, because I'm an overindulgent individual. I want nature, I want jiu-jitsu, I want art. Just give me every form. I mean, even I love whiskey. That's another form of escapism.
That is a form of escapism in itself.
Let me have a few drinks of whiskey on a Saturday night.
Yeah, absolutely. What's some of your favorite types of whiskey?
So lately I've actually been trending. So whiskey is a broad umbrella, right? So whiskey has bourbon under it, you have whiskey under it, you have scotch under it, right? So I'm a scotch fan and I'm a bourbon fan. So in my opinion, the best value drink that I get for bourbon regularly would be Wild Turkey 101.
Oh yeah.
So bourbon pairs good, in my opinion, with beer. So like I like cheap beer. I'd like because I grew up on it. I like Busch tall cans. So I'll get a 6-pack of Busch tall cans and a bottle of Wild Turkey 101, and I'll have a fun Saturday night sitting by the fire in my backyard. Like this is a good Saturday. But you got to be careful, in my opinion, with the substances. Because it's real easy to travel down that craving, that escapism that comes from drinking every single night. And there's been I don't have an addictive personality, but there have been times in my life where I'm like, I drank 3 times this week, I got to go ahead and pull it back a little bit.
Yeah. Healthy boundaries,
yes,
right?
Yes. And a lot of people have trouble putting those boundaries in place. I've been lucky that in my life I've never had that tendency towards addiction. when it comes to substances. When it comes to fitness, exercise, jiu-jitsu, everything else, and I crave all that stuff.
Yeah, I kind of let off the reins too when it comes to fitness. I remember training for 7 days a week for over 4 years. I went from 125 pounds to and then in my to 185, and then in my 5th year I made the huge jump from 190 to 212. And
Where are you working out at now?
Now I don't work. I work out in my backyard, right? Or definitely right here behind me in my in-home studio / jiu-jitsu studio / gym / sparring area / gun training area / podcast studio thing.
You can live shoot there, or no? You just do like a dry fire.
Just dry fire. Yeah, I don't like shooting guns inside city limits. It comes with some consequences there. So
see, that's the other benefit about being an Enumclaw. I can drive a half hour, and I'm in unincorporated King County where you can shoot.
Well, I used to go to my buddy's house, and he had 12 acres of land, so that's where I learned how to shoot. So, leaving the military, I was really, really into guns because I got to shoot a lot. For my occupation was very unique. I got to do kind of whatever I wanted, and I was always signing up to go on gun shoots. So I got to sign up to go on the gun shoots. I do them, the M11, the M9. I hate the M9 by Beretta. It sucks. Not a fan at all. And then I never got to play around with the M4 or the AR-15 platform at all. So I was really heartbroken. Definitely shed some non-existent tears, and I came home and I was like, you know what? It's 2020. They cut my hours down. Now I only get 32 hours a week. I have a whole Monday. What rhymes with Monday? Gun day. So you know what? Monday became gun day, and I spent all of 2020 with one of my best friends, my brother, I would say, Trevor, and he so graciously let us use his backyard with him, and we just built a berm, a double-sided berm, nice and safe. So some days we'd be shooting, if we're doing like drills from the hip or anything, we'd shoot at the lower berm because it was way taller, and the upper side of the berm was only about 6 feet tall, and we'd shoot it. We'd put targets at the base of it, and we'd shoot up to like 150 yards right there.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so we did a run and gun. We did all the things, man, and the 6-foot berm got a lot higher because we kept adding to it, but safety was our number one concern. We didn't want to shoot around other people. I don't like shooting ranges necessarily. They made me kind of uncomfortable.
I'm not a big fan either.
Yeah, definitely not. I
mean, it's hard being a fan of guns right now in Washington, in King County. It's tough. It's true. So we don't have to get too political, but yeah, I'm a huge gun fan as well. I carry all day, every day, pretty much. And I just recently built my first a couple of ARs, but it's now I have one that's not complete, and I procrastinated too long, and now I'm not going to be able to complete it until something changes.
You know what? And here, here on this platform, you get to say whatever you want, man. And something I'm going to make sure that I bring up is how important is it that we do not restrict the rights of our domestic violence survivors, or people who are being stalked. Imagine, if you will, because this has happened to my family. So imagine, if you will, you're getting stalked. There's notes in your car. They're smashing your window. They're getting random texts from numbers you don't know. They're sending you pictures of yourself. And now you have to wonder, how do I protect myself? Go to a gun store. First, you have to pay the money, and then you have to wait 10 days to pick up your firearm when you're receiving deadly threats. And the police and the law enforcement community, unfortunately, cannot do anything because they respond to crimes, not prevent them. That was my scenario in 2020. Thank God I had a great group of friends who helped me. They kept my family fucking safe, because it's really important to protect your family, especially when you're not around. You need a way to equalize any situation. And I think jiu-jitsu is a great equalizer. That's where this all ties in. Jiu-jitsu and Muay Thai are great equalizers. I think they really pair well together. I'm going to be honest, because I've seen a lot of great fighters. I've seen a lot of great fighters coming out of Kindred who pair the two. I was just watching some highlights of one of the fighters from last night, Thomas Harping, and I was like, damn, man, nice. It was a TKO. It was great.
Yep, he did. I watched that too. He did really good.
Yeah.
Think about this though. Circling back to the firearm thing.
Yeah.
So someone who doesn't know anything about firearms, if you were to give them a pistol or an AR-15, what one are they going to gain proficiency in quicker?
Definitely AR-15.
Exactly. And now you can't buy one in here right now.
And especially if you have a lot of land too, it's hard to shoot. And there are some horrible, evil individuals out there who like because they know, some of them know that guns are distance tools.
Yes.
Your fist is not one.
Yes.
Your legs are not one, but guns, they are distance tools.
Absolutely.
And some criminals will take advantage of that. Criminal elements, they're cowardice. They're evil. They want to harm others, and a lot of evil people want to harm other children. Yep. And so I think it's essential for us as Americans to understand truly the importance of not electing individuals who will tell your neighbor that she can't protect herself when she's being stalked.
Yes.
Or will not tell my mother that she has to wait 10 days to get a firearm when she's receiving death threats. And now I have to go become a criminal at a teenage in my teenage years and do dangerous things to keep her safe. Well, that should not be my scenario.
I completely, wholeheartedly agree. There was a scenario here. So I'm a big guy. Obviously guns or knives, weapons can you could be as big a person as you want to be. And if you get hit by another, 185-pound person, it doesn't matter what, if they land that shot, it could be lights out. But that being said, I don't walk around afraid of a lot of people, primarily due to my size, right? And being at least moderately athletic for how big I am, right? But a couple Halloweens ago, I was in my kitchen, and I have a long pathway up the front of my house, and you have to go through a gate and duck under some trees to get to my backyard. Then you have to walk up some stairs to get to my back door. So it's 10 o'clock at night on Halloween. The trick-or-treaters have come and gone. I'm doing dishes in my kitchen, and I hear a pound on my back door. I'm like, that's got to be someone in my family. Maybe they're out trick-or-treating late or something, or maybe they're coming. You can walk from downtown Enumclaw, the bars in downtown, to my house. I'm like, maybe they're coming from downtown from a bar or something. So I asked who it is, and I can't remember the names. It was like John or Dave or some generic name like that. And I was like, who in the heck is that? So I opened the door with my foot in front of it, and there's a person standing there, look stone sober. No, I know to look for the stuff, no glossy red eyes or anything, wearing khakis and a tucked in button-up shirt. And I'm like, can I help you? He goes, you know who I am. You need to let me in. Well, like I said, I carry all the time. So I pulled my gun from behind my back, and I'm like, I don't know you. You need to get out of here. He pushes the door open with me standing there. Like, I fill the doorway. I'm like, this guy is insane. Pushes the door open and walks towards me with my gun and asks me if I'm prepared to do what I need to do. So I didn't quite know what to say. And he goes to put his hands in his pockets.
Oh my God.
And I yell, like, if you put your hands in your pocket, I'm going to shoot you. My wife and daughter are right in the kitchen, right next to me. So I'm like, how long am I going to let this go on? Am I going to risk him pulling something out and hurting me and getting to my wife and daughter? So when I told him if he puts his hands in his pocket, I was going to shoot him, I could tell he kind of snapped to, and he started having a conversation with me. Long story short, we agreed under some specific terms that he was going to turn around and walk back out to the main road and take off. But I think about if my wife were there and I wasn't there, or what her ability, what would I want her to grab? What would I want her to do? Right? My wife doesn't train with firearms at all. A lot of people will say grab a shotgun. Maybe, but how many people honestly know how to rack a shotgun if they've never done it before, right? So then I think about
jam.
Handle a malfunction. So then I think about an AR-15 and the benefits that would be if pull this back and then point and pull the trigger. That's literally, and then you're up at your shoulder as opposed to hands out in front for a moving target. Anyway, that's a real life scenario that happened to me, and it's made me run through a bunch of scenarios in my head thinking about what's happening in Washington State with the gun. And that's not the first time. There's actually a time when I was a kid here in Enumclaw too. We're actually a really peaceful town. There's just been two big things that have happened to me where firearms actually saved me and saved me from encountering a level of violence, I guess, in my life. One when I was a kid, and then this most recent one when I was an adult. And the kind of, you think about stuff when that kind of thing happens,
And I definitely can agree with that. I've shared a couple stories that happened to me right after they happened to me on this podcast. I don't feel the need to call call law enforcement after a situation has been handled, because they're, I just got the notification there's on my street right now, there's a domestic violence situation that police are responding to. So they're busy doing stuff like that. I think that it's important, and it's good for citizens to arm themselves first with knowledge and then with a firearm. If my wife did not have the shoot versus no shoot understanding, she would have mag dumped the autistic human being who decided to fixate on my home and try to pretty much beat down the door and get through. He was banging on the door for 30 minutes. The police didn't respond. When someone's trying they were trying to pretty much kick down our door, and the cops didn't respond. And I had also had a 70-something-year-old lady in here that my wife was trying to protect at the same time. So I got a phone call saying there's somebody trying to break in the house through the front door. I'm like, not the window next to it, the front door. Oh my goodness. It took me calling the operator 5 times on 2 different phones. And they finally connected me to the police sergeant. And I said that if I get there before they get there, they're going to be picking up a dead body. And I'm so thankful that they, I use different terminology than that, obviously, because I'm not an idiot. I'm not going to incriminate myself, but was so thankful that my wife didn't meg dump that human being. Right at the end of the day, all life is very, very important, and knowing when not to shoot is so important. So I'm thankful that you didn't end his life.
I could have too, like
legally. Could have
legally,
too, though. Legally, you could have.
But do I want to expose my daughter to that as well, who's standing right there?
Yes.
That was honestly, that was all that was going through my head at that moment, was like, and let me ask you this. Would you say that training jiu-jitsu helps you manage yourself in high stress situations?
1,000,000%.
Absolutely.
So does fitness,
Absolutely.
So does going through hard things is so important for the brain. If I didn't have to tell some of my family members when people die because other ones can't, my other family members would be traumatized nightly by having to tell, the nightmares of that. If I didn't have the mental fortitude to go through the things that I've had in my life, I would not be here currently right now today, because I would have probably removed myself in the times where I was having mental health crisis. It's important to do hard things to harden your mind and remind yourself that you can accomplish great things. You can hit a target at 100 meters away when you've never shot guns before. You just got to practice. Yep. You can do quick draws. You can practice concealed carry training. You can defend your home how you deem fit, and you can overcome horrible obstacles like life or death scenarios. Knife versus gun is a very normal thing for my life. Apparently, I really am not a fan of it. But when you're leaving work late at night, working 70-hour weeks, and someone tries to rob you with a knife, you have options. You can either deal with the threat and close the distance, or you can create space and use your firearm. And thankfully, I haven't had to discharge it. So thankfully, because I really like my gun, and that's what's most important here. My gun is very pretty. It takes care of me and it keeps me safe. It saved my life 4 times now, and saved one of my friend's life once as well. And I cannot even buy magazines for it.
Responsible gun ownership you're hitting on too. That's very important.
Very important. Training, and the knowledge is out there.
Knowing the laws, when you can and can't shoot, like you touched on, that's very important.
Yes. Do you have any favorite resources that you use to educate yourself?
Friends in the community. You probably know a lot of the same people I do, who I can discuss these things with, and even get some a level of training with. YouTube, you could find anything on YouTube. There's like, can't remember his name, Washington State Gun Scholar or something like that.
Yeah, Washington State Gun Law. Yeah, he is amazing. Yes. He breaks down the laws to the T, so that and he doesn't even read the law to you, because he just explains it. And I don't know how to read lawyer. I really can't, or politician for that matter, because
I'm a politician. Isn't that weird?
Which is what I want to touch on next for sure. I think that some of the 3 my 3 favorite ways to find out new information about firearms. One has to be the We the Female. Carrie Sloan is one of the running mates for that, and she operates out of all over the United States. It's a nonprofit, and she helps arm responsibly, especially domestic violence survivors, but also just really focusing on creating a space for women where they're not going to be with some some guy who may or may not be from the NRA, may or may not be a lifetime member, may or not be an asshole to ladies because he's an asshole to his own wife. You never know who you're going to run into when you go and seek new knowledge. Yep. You might find somebody who puts a 357 in your hand and tell, this is a great concealed carry option. Hey, watch this, guys. And her wrist is now hurt and she's now afraid of firearms.
Yep.
That is literally something I ran into at one of her seminars. So shout out to We the Female. I love what they do. I've donated a few times with the money from this podcast, because all the money from this podcast gets donated to nonprofits. So I love what she does, and hopefully she continues to help arm people with education. And another one is USCCA. They put out free videos all the time. Great way. And also I'm hearing that it's not gun insurance, but it's just gun advocacy, and they will come advocate for you if you are involved in a self-defense shooting. So shout out to them. I'm going to be probably linking up with them in the near future to discuss some of the programs they have for Washington State, where it's illegal to have firearm insurance. So it's illegal to have legal representation. It's
nuts? Do you hear how that came about?
No, but it's insanity.
So they got fined. I want to blame everything on Jay Inslee. I don't know if it was him or not, but somehow they got fined for providing insurance to someone who was involved in a shooting, saying that they were insuring people for committing crimes. So basically the rationale was, if you're involved in a shooting, you've committed a crime, and it's not just for this organization to insure criminals and help and protect them when they commit their crimes.
Criminals don't get gun insurance
until proven innocence at that point, right?
100%.
And that's their argument, but that's why you cannot buy, because I used to be insured by USCCA, and you can't buy concealed carry or self-defense insurance in Washington State nowadays, because who's going to insure you risking that fine that you get from the Washington State government?
100%. And that's a problem, right? Absolutely. Because I have plenty of family members who have and are currently in the legal battle of self-defense shootings right now. Yep. Because criminals are brazen. Criminals are shooting cops. We just had a cop in Seattle get the gun discharged, and it hit the cop right, or almost hit the cop. It was right above his head. People are trying to murder our law enforcement. What do you think they're going to try to do to the normal citizens? It's just a thought. And the third resource I love is active self-protection. They break down police shootings and normal civilian self-defense encounters and tell you what not to do, so you don't find yourself locked up trying to keep your family or your friends safe. And so you don't remove life and to become a murderer for no reason. Don't do it. Don't do it, y'all. Educate yourself. If you're listening in, go to the resources or reach out to me. I can send you a bunch, please. Your life is worth it. Your family's life is worth it. And make sure you vote for people who want to protect you. You can't target law-abiding citizens and say it's criminals that you're going after, because criminals murder children, not law-abiding citizens, and there's no responsible gun owner that's walking up in a school and offing angels. It's not happening.
So what do you think of Colion Noir?
I really do admire what he agrees with. The things too. He also
very educated.
Yes, he's very educated. He's an amazing individual. He disagrees with things that are wrong as well, and I think it's important to do that. We can't stand on any high ground and say, yeah, anybody that agrees with me is right too, no matter what it is. You can't do that. And I think it's important to call out when things are wrong, no matter who you vote for, no matter what you look like, what you believe in, whatever boxes society puts us in, right?
Yep.
It doesn't matter. It's what's right and what's wrong. And we have to be better for the future. We have to be better for the future of our nation. Our children are looking up to us to protect them, one, to teach them, two, and to help lead them into being good people.
So, there's a practice that helped me out with this gun control debate, and we can go off on it all day. I'm assuming you and I could probably talk about guns forever and the laws and how they pertain. And
we'll end up shooting together. I can feel it already. It's going to happen.
You know what steel manning is? Have you heard that term?
No.
Okay. So you know what a straw man fallacy is?
No, you're going to have to break it down both for me. I'm not educated. I'm sorry.
Straw man fallacy would be, so say you and I are having a debate on a topic. Mm-hmm. You're going to pick the interpretation of my argument that's easiest for you to argue against, even if it doesn't fully reflect how I feel.
Yes, so try to attack an open
Yeah,
ankle
so
or
I
something.
could say the sky is blue. We got to at least agree the sky is blue, and you could say, well, it might be a shade of blue, and then you start going off on how there's many shades of blue. Really, not even really addressing our actual debate. At that point, you're just taking it off to an area that's easy for you to argue against.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so steel manning is the opposite of that, and I can't remember who I heard the term from, but I started doing it in practice in my head. So steel manning is taking the hardest interpretation of the opposition's argument and seeing if your argument or your knowledge of the topic can withstand their best possible argument. So say the gun control debate. It's real easy to say, well, if you take guns away from people, you can't shoot folks. Okay, maybe.
Criminals are going to criminal. Taliban's going to Taliban.
Yes.
People are going to be evil when they're evil. And the only way to stop it is by physically stopping it. That's why we call the cops to respond to these things, right? With guns.
Yep. So the steelman version of that would be me taking the best possible interpretation of the anti-gun movement and arguing that in my head. Okay, like really putting myself in can I defeat my own argument with all the knowledge I have on the opposition? How knowledgeable am I on the opposition? How much do I know the anti-gun movement's argument? How well do I know it? Can I recite their argument before they say it to me? Can I give them the most generous and can I be generous to them in the best possible way and argue against my position as strong as possible? And does my argument still hold water once I do that? And my opinion is, if you can't argue your opposition's argument better than them, you probably need to do more research before you start speaking on the topic.
Well, I can definitely relate to that because often our quote unquote elected representatives, they spend a lot of time talking about things they don't know. A big issue right now. I just had Snohomish County Sheriff on, Adam Fortney, and yes, in that episode, my mics got all jacked up for some reason, but his message is still very clear that police pursuits in certain scenarios are very important. In other ones, maybe not, right? But it's up for the people who are involved in the situation to decide whether to terminate a pursuit or not, or pursue it. We cannot have somebody rob a house. Have the police pull up, literally. They just get in their car and drive off, and you cannot pursue them.
Yep.
That's somebody's home. Their place where they lay their head was just raped for all intents and purposes.
You have to see them physically commit the act. The officer has to witness them physically commit the crime, the criminal offense before they are allowed to even consider pursuing.
Yes. And even in times like that, they'll try to say, do not pursue.
Exactly. Because what commander or what sergeant wants to take on that liability at that point? Because if they're wrong, then they're going to have the entire weight of the Washington state government coming down on them. If they're, so yeah, absolutely. It's pretty crazy. I've been on, I'm not going to say what city it was with, but I've been on ride-alongs where there's a person suspected of DUI that they call in and say, hey, this car, I found the car that got called in earlier, and they say, hey, did you witness them drinking? Are you sure? Then told to terminate the pursuit.
And that really kills me. I lost one of my very, very good military friends to a DUI, and I've also lost my brother to a DUI. So DUI incidents, they can lead to horrible car crashes that can remove life from the world. I think DUI when somebody's involved, when they die, it's somebody pretty much just got murdered. It's horrible, right?
Absolutely.
We can prevent that by stopping drunk drivers from doing drunk driver shit.
So in the nature of steel manning, I've also heard from some law enforcement that it's not as bad as a lot of local departments are making it seem, and that there is a lot of departments that are going above and beyond what is actually laid out in the law to try to prove a point to the Washington state legislators.
So they're just being like, okay, well, we're not going to do it at all, kind of thing.
Yeah, they're choosing not to pursue when they can because they're trying to prove a point to the legislators. Like, oh, you see all these metrics increased when you pass this law, therefore the law is unjust. So they're actually proceeding with they're basically laying a foundation to argue against the laws that might not necessarily need to be laid the way that it is.
It's dereliction of duty.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Your election of duty, and that does and can potentially lead to loss of life. It's disgusting.
Yeah, yep, I agree. And then I've heard that from law enforcement that, hey, a lot of these local departments and local sheriffs and local law enforcement can do more than they're doing. They're not doing it because they're trying to prove a point to the legislators.
And
so I've
that
heard
really
that. I don't know.
frustrates.
I'm not an expert on the topic. I know a lot of folks in law enforcement, and I try to know as much as I can about law enforcement. Like I said, being on City Counsel the way I am, I work directly with them. I'm also on a public safety committee, so I meet with the local police department here often, and I listen to them, and I do my best to be empathetic towards them and hear what's going right and going wrong with them. But try reading all the laws that were passed. Like sit down with the actual legislations is preventing pursuits and try to sift through that and fully understand it. It's very difficult.
Yeah. And I think there's so much wrapped into it. It's overwhelming at this point. You know, you don't necessarily need to pass more legislature to be doing your job as a legislator at all.
Well,
you don't necessarily need to.
I think that oftentimes too, that's kind of part of the problem is that, well, when you leave, I think that lots of times these laws that are passed are purposefully left vague, so it gives the people that it gives the legislators a little bit of leeway. Well, you interpret it this way, I interpret it this way. It's kind of like a CYA, right? Cover your ass. Sorry, I don't know if they're allowed to cuss on here.
Oh, I cuss a lot.
Cool. Yeah. It's kind of like them covering their asses. Like, well, it doesn't explicitly say this, so it protects them on one end, but then they can also hold people accountable by saying, well, you shouldn't have interpreted it this way. You should have been interpreted it this way. So I think that some of the laws are purposefully written vaguely in order to allow them to do that, to give themselves leeway and hold people accountable, and accountability shouldn't necessarily be there. Does that make sense?
Yes, 100%. I appreciate you shedding light on that, man. It's really important that we as citizens are informed. Being an informed citizen doesn't mean just watching Fox or CNN or any mainstream media outlet that's going to fabricate whatever story to make money off ad revenue. I think it's important to branch away from narratives, to gain perspective in every way possible. I have a lot of people who are very, very different from me politically, as far as their ideologies go, as far as their race, religion, creed. Doesn't matter. My neighbors are my neighbors. I talk to my neighbors about scenarios they feel passionate about and gain perspective. I learn what they think, what they want to do. And that kind of molds, this moral compass that I have. Do you find a lot of value in being a public servant, also kind of tap it into your area as well?
Yeah. It's incredibly frustrating at times, but at the same time, I could see the need for just, I consider myself like an average everyday dude, right? Like I go to work, I try to support my family. I take care of my friends and the people around me. I like to think that I'm a kind individual when I meet folks. And I have no aspirations to be a bureaucrat or a lifelong politician. It's not a career outlet for me. It's not. So I think that we need more folks like that in politics. I have no aspirations to pursue politics further than my locally here in my own city. So I'm not going to kowtow to anybody's interests other than what my communities are. And what I think is right for my community.
So kind of branching away from the idea of career politicians is something that I agree with. There is no way that you can be connected to the people that you represent when you have spent so many years in office. And I think that's one of the major issues that we're having with our country right now, as far as politics go. We don't have people who know what it's like to worry about having to defend yourself with a firearm. Why? Because you spend all your time wherever you live on your big paycheck, and also surrounded by state patrolmen at the state capitol. Of course, you don't know what it's like to fear for your life or to need a firearm.
Yeah, people
probably don't have people bothering you.
Yeah, you have bodyguards that are armed protecting you.
and 100%. And of course, that's what I call, when we talk about this disgusting term, which to me it's disgusting because my mom's never had any white privilege or whatever. But the idea of white privilege, what about elite privilege? People who are living an elite lifestyle where they are not living as a normal citizen, but they speak for local citizens because of a few photo ops, and they're in the right place at the right time, shaking hands with kids. Come on now.
Well, and
Let's be better.
That's what's so. I'm really proud of that. If you ever have a chance to come out here, hit me up, because the weekends out here in my hometown are popping, man. It's still a community. We close down the downtown street, block it off so no cars can go on there. We have fire pits and picnic tables and live music, and we have car cruises the first Friday of every month, where a couple, it's been as little as 700-800, as much as like 2,000 or 3,000 people just converge on downtown with classic cars. It's a big party. The police are really, really cool. They're just making sure everyone's safe. They're not out writing arbitrary tickets for nonsense, trying to generate revenue. I'm really, really proud of what this town has created, and it's become a destination for other local cities that kind of come down here on the weekends, because they know, hey, you go to Enumclaw, you're gonna have a good time. Like it's just a blast out there. So being able to be part of that and making sure that stays a thing is huge. So say what you want about COVID and what happened during COVID. I have my thoughts on how everything went during that time. But one thing you could assure yourself, there was going to be an outdoor party every weekend downtown in Enumclaw throughout COVID.
Well, I'm definitely gonna have to come down, man. It sounds like a very, very enjoyable experience. And yeah, absolutely. Definitely sounds like a destination. Sounds like a place for me. I don't enjoy being in the city with overpriced everything and surrounded by people who are just drunk, acting reckless. I like being around people who have some sense about themselves. Do some people drink too much here and there? Whatever. But
we have a strong independent streak. Yeah,
yes.
there's a t-shirts downtown at one of the local shops here that say Freedom Claw on it. That sell
I love
out every time they put them up, because we're very strong and independent, and we know what we like here in town, and we're kind of unabashed about it, and we hey, this is who we are. You're not going to stop us. So and we're one of the few cities that actually we're struggling right now. We run our own natural gas utility out here. And a lot of the state level legislation that's going through are making us, they're forcing us essentially to jack up the prices on all of our own our natural gas utility out here. I think it's 23 or 24%. Don't quote me on that exactly. That we're having to increase because of the Climate Commitment Act that Washington State passed.
That is insanity. I don't, as if people in this day and age, with this type of economy, with this type of leadership in politics, need more financial struggle to worry about. Wow.
Well, and so talk about straw manning, right? Okay, so a perfect example of that, by saying that we want to operate our own natural gas utility and we don't want to deviate from that until there's an affordable alternative put in place for our customers. So the straw man argument of that is, Enumclaw doesn't care about the environment.
Well, yes.
So it's real easy to argue that Enumclaw doesn't care about the environment if you want to say that we are not wanting to increase our taxes or conform to the Climate Commitment Act.
The people that are saying this live in places where there are no freaking trees. Yes. Seattle, if you go to Seattle, you find more needles on the ground than plants, literally. Like I was there just yesterday working. Okay, like it's true. How are you going to sit there and say that, you don't care about the environment? Y'all don't care about the environment. If there were trees in Seattle, they'd be addicted to fentanyl just like everybody up lined up on the streets. I've seen it. It's horrible.
So if you start taxing a readily available, inexpensive utility like natural gas without having an inexpensive alternative in place for that, you're not affecting the middle class or the upper class that can afford it. You're really only affecting the people who can't afford it at that point, or who are struggling and living paycheck to paycheck. So
100%.
That's what I'm talking about career politicians passing these laws and this regulation under the guise of wanting to be green and environmentally friendly, while not looking out for the constituents or the people that live in the states that they're running, or the counties or the cities that they're running, who are struggling already, living paycheck to paycheck. It makes no sense to me.
It's insanity. I don't know. Really I don't know a single family who's well off right now on my street who's doing okay. Yeah. People who are retired are coming back to work.
And inflation, it's just the cost of goods is out of control right now, and all. So there's something that a lot of people don't think about, just being a politician, that I think about a lot now. Anytime you regulate business, small businesses to big businesses. You're asking them to conform to something. When you're asking a business to conform to something, generally, they have to hire people to ensure that that conformity is happening. Those people have to get paid. When you have to pay those people, the cost of paying those people is passed on to the consumer. So right now there's a law that was passed, or it's about to be passed, saying that restaurants have to start separating out their food waste for compost. Yes. So that means that every restaurant that has to do that, that's a new step you put in the process. That's a new employee or additional hours for employees to ensure that that's actually happening. Is the person that's running that restaurant not going to get paid as much because they have to hire that employee, or are they going to raise the prices of their goods to ensure that that employee can get paid? You know, people who own restaurants, they also have mortgages. They have insurance, they have kids, they have families. It's not fair to cut into their paycheck. All that winds up getting passed on to the consumer. So
100%. And I think it's disingenuous for anybody to say that that passing any law that affects a business directly is not going to affect the consumer. It 100% is. So I definitely agree with you, my brother. There's something that I wanted to know before we wrap up here. I have to know, what would you say to somebody who's on the fence about starting jiu-jitsu or starting their journey with it? What would you advise them to not do or do? What would you say to them?
I'm not one of those folks that says jiu-jitsu is for everybody. I think it's for a lot of people, and I think that it could do good for a lot of people. But I would say, give it a month. Just go in. If someone has a beginner's class or a basics class, start there. If you don't get along with the first school that you go to, maybe also try out another school. But give it a month of going to 1 or 2 classes a week and see if it's for you. The reason I mention other schools is because even me personally, I've attended some schools where I just didn't like the vibe. I'm not an old school guy. I understand that folks all have jobs. So if you show up 5 minutes late, I hate the mentality of having to stand on the mat and wait to be invited on, or have some kind of discipline, like having to do burpees or something like that if you're late to class. There are schools that still do that. And some people like that. They like that old school strict mentality, and that environment is good for some folks. For me, I'm more laid back. If you show up late to a class, I'm going to give you a hug and say, hey, I'm glad you're here. Hop in the warm-ups whenever you get a chance, right? But find out what environment is right for you. So visit a couple schools. Visit one school. If you vibe right away, stay there. If you don't vibe right away, don't give up on it. Try another school. Once you find somewhere that feels as comfortable as it can in the beginning, give it a month. Go once or twice a week and see if it's something that you like, and see if it adds benefit to your life. And if it does, I'd hope that you keep doing it. If it doesn't, then don't give up on the search for something that's going to give you that outlet that jiu-jitsu gives, that physical exertion, the mental exertion, the finding that flow state. Keep searching for that no matter what.
The flow state. Again, I love it. I absolutely love it. Well, I love the things that we talked about today. I really enjoy you talking about flow state, escapism, the benefits of jiu-jitsu, self-defense situations, and especially being a little bit transparent about politics in this state. I don't think it's talked about enough in an honest way. A lot of people get wrapped up in their image and worried about re-election, and they kind of disassociate themselves from ever being a normal citizen. And I really admire that you really hold true to your beliefs and to take care of the people that you represent. That is how I know that you are a true and effective leader. And I really do want to thank you for that, man. I really do.
Yeah, absolutely. And for anybody listening that's out there, fact checking me, I did my best. This is a on the off the cuff conversation. So if I said something that's not exactly right, I apologize, and I'd be willing to correct myself. But like I said, when you just have these conversations, it's hard to be 100% factual about everything all the time.
Yeah, and this wasn't planned at all. This wasn't planned.
Last night, right?
We didn't bring up the stats. We were just kind of like freestyling this thing a little bit, and I really think that's where where a normal, natural conversation should begin. You shouldn't have it scripted. I don't want the fake, watered down version of who you are as a human being. I want to hear who you are. And I really appreciate you sharing yourself with the rest of the world and all the listeners who are going to tap into this.
Absolutely. We got to get together and train sometime, man. Come out to open mat or something every Saturday morning, 9 a.m.
9 a.m. If I can make to that one and still make it up here, I think I can. I might do both.
We're a good 90 minutes away though. Enumclaw and Edmonds is 90 minutes.
Uber helicopter. I'll figure it out.
All right, man. Well, good talking to you. It was a blast. I appreciate it.
You as well, my brother. Thank you so much. And thank you for each and every listener for tapping in. This has been another episode of Off the Deep End Podcast. If you like what we do here, make sure to head over to our Facebook page. If you want to join us for an episode or want to support, you can always tap into our listener support program. The best thing you can do to help this platform is just talk about it. This is a conversation starter. What do you like that your politicians are doing? What do you like that your leaders are doing? What do you hate that your politicians are doing? What do you love that your leaders are doing? Leaders are leading from the front. They're being honest and genuine. I think it's essential that we break down the boundaries that divide us as human beings and really connect on a deeper and more personal level. I hope you all find your flow state this week, and much love, y'all.